Hey guys, welcome back to another video where we will be looking at web-based cluster monitor feature which is requested quite often by system administrators. It is pretty common for bigger enterprises to have a load balanced environment with multiple AgilePoint servers in a cluster. System admins often monitor the servers in a cluster using third-party tools for performance parameters like CPU usage, RAM usage, disk space, uptime, etc. However, those tools mainly give infrastructure level statistics only. It is equally important to monitor what is going inside the process thread which is hosting the AgilePoint engine. This is where Cluster Server Manager module comes in. Let's first understand the usage of Cluster Server Manager module, which will be monitored by this new Cluster Monitor module. Cluster Server Manager module plays a key role in the overall performance of a clustered environment where it provides process level load balancing on top of regular NLB environment. It makes sure the process load is equally distributed between the various nodes in a network load balanced environment for better utilization and performance of the cluster. It also ensures that if a process is already loaded in memory of node 1 and if NLB device sends the next request to node 2, it internally routes that to node 1 to avoid unnecessary wastage of memory and faster execution, as node 1 already has the process image loaded. So it brings in that intelligence. In case one node fails, CSM module transfers all its executing processes to other node in the cluster seamlessly. Hence, monitoring the execution of CSM module is essential. The cluster monitor module provides key statistical information of all the nodes in the cluster. This includes information about the server node, memory utilization, processes and threads, average event execution time, database connections, and more. The administrator can record the performance of the entire cluster for a given time period and download the same for further analysis. In past, this was provided as a server-side WinForm application, but that meant system admin had to log into virtual machine to run the utility. Starting AgilePoint NX version 9, we will be providing this information right within the Manage Center module itself. Let's look at this feature in action. So I am in my demo environment over here, and if I navigate to Manage, under System, there is a new option called Cluster Monitor. This option is only visible if it is a clustered environment with more than one AgilePoint servers running. This menu option is also controlled by a permission. By default, it is visible to the system admin account only, but if you go to Manage, Roles, we'll expand one of the roles, go to Access Rights. One of the access rights is View System Monitor and Cluster Monitor. If you give this permission to any role, people belonging to that role can see this option. By default, usually it is given to administrator role only. So we'll drill down into this option. As you can see, my environment has two nodes running in a cluster right now. And by default, it is showing me an overview of how my nodes in a cluster are performing. So it gives me key statistical information. What is the server name? Its IP address, whether it is running as a master server or a slave server. Within a clustered environment, only one server would be running as master. Other servers would be running as slave in this case. If you find that more than one have this value as true, that means there's something wrong with your network load balanced environment. Similarly, if you find none of them is true, that also is wrong, and you will have to probably restart your AgilePoint server. Similarly, it shows you the internal memory utilization by the AgilePoint engine, processes in cache, process instances which are loaded in the memory in cache for faster execution. Those are shown over here. Current event processing threads. I'm going to explain this as I drill down into all these options. Current worker processes threads, high priority queue items, average event processing time. It's showing that it is just 11 milliseconds, which is pretty efficient, and the current database connections. Now, if I drill down into one of these nodes, you can get more information. You can drill down into both nodes as well to compare them. So the under server information bucket over here, you're seeing name of the server, the process ID used by the AgilePoint engine, IP address of that VM, whether this is running as a process load balancer or not. Within a clustered environment, only one of them would be active, rest of them would be standby. The main usage, as I explained, of this is it is telling me which engine's cluster server manager is mainly running as active, and the responsibility of that particular node would be to check whether the processes are equally distributed or not, or if the one of the server goes down, it has to transfer to other server. So it is controlling this aspect. Memory utilization, and whether it is running as master server or a slave server. So this is different from the process load balancing. The master or slave server is more in terms of the server, and process load balancing is more in terms of the cluster server manager, which is controlling this aspect. Under processes tab, you'll see process instances cached in the memory right now for faster execution. Right now, my environment is not very highly loaded, so it is showing as 0, but it will show you for faster execution how many instances are currently executing in the memory. More recent images are kept in the cache. How many instances are registered on this particular node? These are the ones which are currently loaded in terms of being handled by this server. Again, if you see, the numbers are almost the same between the two servers. The process load balancer makes sure that they are equally distributed, or at least 60-40% kind of distribution. And if one server goes down, it will be transferred over here. And also, similar to the process instances, it shows me how many process definitions or process models are cached in the memory for faster execution. Database connections, it tells me what are the currently used database connections. Right now it's 0 in my case, but at one point of time it did hit 112. So it is telling me the maximum it ever reached. Event processing threads, currently it is telling me 6 threads are in use. The maximum ever used were 10, or the maximum allowed, I have set it to 10 as well. Now 10 is the default value. If your virtual machine has more memory, typically you can go up to 30 or even 50. Event processing threads are the threads which are used to process the various events in AgilePoint engine. They play a very important role for processing events like complete work item, promoting process to the next step, assigning work items, etc. Worker threads, these are the ones which are used for executing system activities. So again, play a very important role. Currently it is telling me 6 of them are in use. Maximum ever used were 6 in my environment, and the maximum allowed are 10. Again, just like event processing threads, you can set it to a higher value like 30 or 50 depending on if you have a very powerful machine. Event queue, it is telling me there is a high priority queue for high priority events, low priority queue for background job events, and normal priority queue, and how many items are currently in those queues. Event processing time, perhaps the most important parameter out of these, it tells me how my engine is performing. The minimum time taken to process an event is 0 milliseconds. Maximum has been around 2 seconds. If this value is very high, you can see maybe one of the system activities is not performing that well. But the most important parameter is average. The average usually has to be less than 100 to 200 milliseconds. My engine is performing quite well. It's only 11 milliseconds over here. So the main criteria would be, if you see this number going above maybe 200 milliseconds, that's when you basically start talking to AgilePoint support. Or maybe even 300 milliseconds is okay, but beyond that you would definitely reach out to AgilePoint support to get a health check schedule. App initiator threads, this denotes the number of threads which are available to initiate a new request. When a user is submitting a new request, you expect it to be processed immediately compared to other background events, and this is the queue which is there. Maximum allowed as per my license is 2, and currently it is in use is 2, so that as soon as the new request comes in, it would kick off a process instance. Now this number is controlled by license based on the number of cores and license. So in my environment, it is just 2 over here. Similarly, it is showing me the numbers for the other server as well. Now one other thing which you can notice over here is that at the top there is a start recording button. Now these statistics, they are refreshed every 30 seconds by default. But if you're finding as a system admin that your server is running slow, you can always click on this. It gives you a warning that it may slow down your browser because it's continuously capturing some of the statistics for next 30 minutes or till the time you stop it. The maximum time is 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and click start. Now, while it is running, I can still navigate to other modules within my manage center, but if I navigate out of manage center, it will stop capturing. I'll go to cluster monitor. As you can see, it is still recording, and whenever it is ready, I can just click on download and it gives me a JSON file. Now in my case, I already recorded some values for a couple of minutes. I copy this one and paste it in an online JSON formatter, and as you can see, it is giving me a timestamp and how node 1 was performing and node 2 was performing, and then the next timestamp after 30 seconds and how node 1 and node 2 are performing. So you can send this to support and the IT team, and they can analyze what's happening within your server. So with this, we come to the end of this video. We hope that this feature makes system admins' life easier and they are able to better monitor the performance of AgilePoint server. Thanks a lot for your time.